In the Agatha Christie novels that feature both Poirot and Hastings, Poirot is the main character, but the narrator in first person is Hastings. And I wasn't convinced that this narrative style to use Hastings' voice could bring me as the reader close enough to the action of the story, the suspects, the clues, as I could possibly be if Poirot was instead narrating the story. I mean, he is the main character after all. But once I gave it a go, I was immersed. And why Hastings narrating and Poirot investigating work so well is precisely because of how different the two characters are. Poirot is eccentric, and his mind works in wonderful ways that no ordinary person could possibly understand. He's 100% fascinating and 100% unrelatable. Chances are, if we'd been reading the story through Poirot's lens, we might not have enjoyed it as much. So Hastings being the first-person narrator kind of allowed Poirot to just do his own thing. And Poirot keeps Hastings involved in everything. He tags along everywhere and documents every minute detail of Poirot's investigation. In fact, most of the time you forget that Hastings is the one narrating because he doesn't embed himself into the narrative. There's barely any interiority, so the actual narration doesn't reflect his biases at all, which is what usually happens with a first-person POV. Hastings as a narrator is capable of telling you what actually happens. And in that way, you get to trust him. And you also get to see how Poirot thinks, how his mind wanders, what he notices or finds interesting. So Poirot is still the star. In fact, Hastings is such an objective narrator that it almost feels like the narration is in third person. You know, the kind of ghostly narrator that stands slightly adjacent to the characters and tells the story as it is. But despite there being no interiority in Hastings' narration, he gets more than enough lines of dialogue so that we get to see exactly who he is as a character within the story when he interacts with other characters or he's constantly questioning Poirot's every move. And why I also enjoyed Hastings as a standalone character in the story is because Hastings is us, the readers. Unskilled at solving anything, noticing anything, deducing anything, and he brings some levity to an otherwise tense situation simply because he's so inept. But that's only because we're comparing him to Poirot. Otherwise, he's just an ordinary guy. And the types of questions he asks Poirot about the investigation are the same questions that we, the readers, have on our minds. So Hastings asking these questions on our behalf makes him a bit of a darling, because we need the direction, the recaps, and the reminders. And if Hastings didn't act as the buffer between us and Poirot, the story would feel slightly out of touch. And in a murder mystery, if the reader doesn't feel like they have any skin in the game or a chance at figuring out the mystery themselves, we're gonna lose interest.